Chapter 20. August passed in a blur of heat and weekend hangovers. By the third Sunday of September, Hector's room at the house was nearly clear of his things. On Monday, he'd finish packing the car and drive north to the Presidio house. His friends had all volunteered to help him prepare for the move, and Hector assured them that the preparations would be easy. Once again, he'd only be packing what could fit inside Chromefoot. He spent the morning with Frankie by the piano playing chords and notes and talking about her upcoming shows and events. They plotted various trips to visit each other and marked calendars on their phones. The disruption of the move would be a challenge for them, even with all their momentum and commitments to each other. But when Frankie said she'd be visiting frequently, Hector knew she was speaking the truth. The shade surrounding the piano was warmer than it had been in the midsummer months. September in Los Angeles was usually an unbearable month. Its dry heat combined with the strongest Santa Ana winds of the year fostered perfect conditions for the fire season. On that last Sunday afternoon at the old house, Renee arrived first, and the others would arrive not long after. Hector and Frankie helped Renee unload his bags into the house, and the three of them ventured to the storeroom to get the food and supplies they'd need for the afternoon meal. The hot weather required cooler fare that included salads, lettuce-wrapped things, and ice-cold beer. Wonder was in the kitchen with a flowing dress, a blue baseball cap, and her chewing gum. Renee was out in the trees by the piano with Noah and Joe. Frankie and Hector began rinsing produce in the cool sink as Wonder exited the back door to join the group in the small forest. Hector began setting the table in its usual location on the lawn, but stopped when he was struck with the idea to do something different. He found Wonder playing piano with Noah and Joe seated on blankets nearby. With their help, Hector moved the fold-out table and chairs into the round of trees. After the table was set, he walked back to the kitchen to give Frankie a kiss that dripped with upper lip sweat. When Fams arrived, he helped Wonder remove pastas, salads, and fruits chilling in the refrigerator, and the group exchanged welcoming hugs. The shaded meadow wasn't large, but there was enough room for the fold-out table to seat their small group. They toasted to the house, to the ocean greens, and to their hopes for the unknown future. Wonder was the first to step away from the table to play the piano with a rendition of one of Gershwin's 3 preludes. She played a few more songs before asking Renee if he might sit and play. Renee played a few of Satie's Gymnopédies, which brought something like a permanent smile to Wonder's face. Renee and Wonder provoked the rest of the group to try their hand at playing, but each of them declined, wishing not to dismantle the atmosphere. After a push from Renee, Joe played Lean on Me, knowing Hector and Frankie's history with the song and the piano. The dusk came earlier than it had in July or August. Yellows, golds, oranges, and darker oranges arrived with the final hour of daylight, until the blues and darker blues brought along the night stars. Joe sat up from the piano bench and joined the rest of the group seated at the table. Hector began an outstretched reach for one of the larger wooden bowls near the center of the table until he was interrupted by Renee's voice. When he turned around, he found his bearded friend gesturing a black marker in his direction. "Are we doing what I think we're doing?" Hector asked with a knowing tone. "You know what this is for, Heck," Renee replied with a surprised laugh. Without saying another word, Hector stood up and made room for Renee to outstretch his arm above the table and the group. Renee uncapped the black marker and handed it to Hector. The table of friends clapped and hollered loudly as Hector filled in the diorama's right eye. Renee burst into a hearty laugh at Hector's overly cautious marker work, and the two friends hugged before bowing to the group, and then once more in the direction of the piano. Around the table, Noah and Joe circled with ice cream sandwiches and fresh pitchers of sangria. Hector got up from the conversations and interactions at the table to venture inside for a portable speaker. When he returned across the lawn with the device in hand, he heard the piano playing Moonlight Sonata. He drunkenly muttered to himself, "That's gotta be Wonder back at the bench." Closing his eyes to hear the rolling notes, he felt the cooling dusk breeze hitting his arms and neck. He recalled Frankie's hand on his shoulder through the dark when they'd met. Then he thought of the mountain and the lake and the meadowlands. The sonata played on, and he thought of a September in the past when he'd skated from dusk, late into the night, possessed by the desire to mimic the style and tricks of Pat Brennan. He began to imagine what San Francisco looked like at that moment. the hills, the bay, and the ocean. Wind, rain, and fog that would arrive at all hours of the day and the night. This was the moment that saw the ending of one dream and the beginning of a new one. Hector felt the fire and lightness of destiny fill his body, and it caused him to momentarily stumble in the dark. "You trying that old trick on me again, Hector?" Frankie called as the table laughed. She walked back into the trees and met him with a kiss. "Can we put the blanket down right here after everyone goes home?" "That's the best thing I've heard all summer," Hector confirmed, smiling. They stayed at the table late into the night. The piano played on. Each friend knew that once they stepped outside the little forest's borders, the summer would be over. Wonder was the first to announce her departure. Several hours later, the remaining group elected that it was time to clear the remaining perishables from the table before exchanging goodbyes. Hector and Frankie walked back through the front door and rinsed dishes and poured new glasses of wine. They undressed and walked naked across the back lawn and into the trees. In the quiet dark, under the cool shaking leaves, they removed the time from themselves and replaced it with joy.